nice pictures or good models or even doing good architecture. While that's called for in order to add business mission value, you really have to have that continuing business mission focus. And I think as an architect community, we in general need to stress over and over again that while IT solutions and integrated solutions may ultimately result from what we do or what we recommend, ultimately our focus is on the prize. Our focus is on the business mission value, achieving those business mission activities that need to get done that are the core essence of the enterprises we support. So I just wanted to reiterate that point that's kind of been flowing through a lot of what we've been talking about today, but I just want to kind of drive it clearly home one more time. So this afternoon we have a presentation now on perspectives on the value of planning versus firefighting. We have Mr. Bob Stouffer, CEO from Information Dynamics, and Ronald Vandiver, Director of Architecture and Integration and Management, Army Capabilities Integration Center, U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command. And I will let them take off. As I understand it, something special is about to happen.
Well, good afternoon. I am an architect, but I am also a firefighter. Now, when we began this topic, we thought, how do we title it? And you're going to perhaps see in your program a title that says, the value of planning versus firefighting. My staff got real excited about that. And I said, no, that's wrong. That's not how I want it. I wanted the value of firefighting versus planning. Now, most of you are not going to take me serious now, having walked in here with this uniform on. I will tell you that I come out of Training and Doctrine Command in the United States Army. We are very fortunate in terms of the gifted individuals that we have that serve us every day, and as architects we come alongside them to help give them a process and tools that they can use to ultimately provide capabilities to the warfighter. When someone asks the question to me, what is the return of investment for the architecture work that is being done today in the United States Army, I would say to you, it is saving the lives of our sons and daughters. We take very seriously this thing called architecture. Now, I'd like to tell you, but the reality is, it is hard work, and it is a journey. And for as much as we would like to think that we put all these enterprise architects years in place, and that everyone comes and says, isn't this marvelous? And that we can take them and say, oh, you had a question? Here's the answer. And they listen to us? I don't know. I would submit to you that architecture is being used more today than it has ever been in the United States Army. But I will tell you, life is very difficult. So here we are. Boy, the sun is on that. Architecting, the value of firefighting that is there. When we look in terms of this, we've talked a little bit about it, but let's talk about it. Where does this thing go? How do I go? When we look in terms of culture associated with this field called architecture, you know, I am convinced that every time that we use this statement, what we mean is those in the business community, the operators, their culture needs to change. In reality, it is our culture that needs to change, because we have come into this environment very compliant driven. I love DODAF, but I hate DODAF. The worst thing that ever happened to architecture were these things called views, because now everyone in fact says, what is architecture? It's a series of views. And so when they look at that, they fail to understand the power of architecture is not the views, is not the artifact, is not the in-state product, but it is in fact the process that it underpins and the decisions that are made because of that architecture. So the reality inside the Army footprint is that tendencies to sacrifice the perceived long-term benefits to address the near-term delivery. That means that is going to put us into this area called firefighting. It's like this description that you get there of the individual plant that comes up and says, I need a greenhouse built ASAP. That's exactly just what is happening. This morning, I diverted myself out as I got a series of emails from the G3 of the Army saying, Ron, can you turn this and can you turn it in 5 days? And the answer is, it is an impossible task. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn it in 5 days. Because if I don't turn it in 5 days, I am no longer relevant. And I would submit to you that just as it was spoke, that at one time, and maybe still so, we have individuals that sit inside the room, and it is their best military judgment that brings us to the end state or the solution set. I submit that any architecture that I can bring into the room is going to add value in terms of that. And so, here we are. We got principles, policies, models, and standards, but the tough thing is there really something to be compliant with? Now, this is what my staff, I looked at them and said, I have been a planner before. No fun. No fun. You sit in a cubicle somewhere and you work through plans. You put the plans inside the safe and no one ever looks at them until they come down the hallway and say, you got something that I can use? I like the idea about being a firefighter. Because by being a firefighter architect, it means I get the email that comes from the G3 of the Army and says, can you turn this in 5 days? And I say, wow, my adrenaline is starting to rush. I'm going to be able to take architecture and be able to go in, and if I pull it off, I'm a hero. I like being a hero. How about you? If I don't pull it off, I just walk back into the 3 and say, you gave me the impossible task. I worked as hard as I could. I think I gave you something of value, but I know that it misses the mark. Next time, give me a little bit longer. And I don't get beat up for that. So it's a win-win situation when you look in terms of the fact of this thing associated with firefighting. Now, there is one thing that is constant in the United States Army, and that is change. And we're being asked to be adapted. 5 years ago, I sat in a large building with about 40 architects, and we built the foundation for what is called today the Modular Force of the Army. About that same time, the Future Combat System program came in, and architecture was the basis upon which the first specifications were written that went out for the platforms to be in fact procured. Exciting times, but FCS program is discontinued. And we're taking capabilities from that, and there's some reuse that is occurring. But the reality is, in terms of the fact that we thought we had it, we changed, and we're changing again. When we look at this thing called brigade combat teams that are the center of our universe, we came up and we said we know exactly how many we need. In the neighborhood of about 73. The answer is now, should it be 73? And so I have some senior leadership that perhaps is saying the answer is 64. So as an architect, I get the opportunity in a firefighting role to very quickly turn work that we've been able to do and say, I don't know, maybe. To respond effectively to a rapidly changing world, this architecture thing does have to be embedded inside of the process. So that means I don't get to know the people after they call me in. Now, very interesting. For the journey that I have had, it has always been about operationalizing the architecture. As you heard some others say that CIOs, G6s are entrusted with architecture in their services or in their organizations. Do you know who the chief architect of the Army is? The G3 of the Army, the operator. There's great goodness associated with that when we begin to look at it because of the opportunity that is there.